Welcome to our show. Today, we're diving into a fascinating topic that touches on medicine, history, and mythology. We're going to explore the origins and influence of the medical profession's ethical code. So let's start with something many of us might have noticed, those snake symbols on medical logos. What's the story behind that?
Ah, yes. It's a symbol that's been around for centuries and has quite an interesting history. If you've ever looked closely at medical school logos, especially in places like China, you'll often see a staff with one or two snakes wrapped around it. For instance, Shanghai Jiaotong University School of Medicine and Zhejiang University School of Medicine both feature two snakes in their logos.
Two snakes? That's interesting. Are there any with just one snake?
Absolutely. Peking Union Medical College and Xianya Medical College have a single snake in their logos. And it's not just limited to medical schools. Even the World Health Organization incorporates this symbol into their logo.
Wow, it seems to be everywhere in the medical world. But where did this symbol come from?
Well, that's where we dive into some fascinating Greek mythology. The origin of this symbol can be traced back to the god of medicine, Asclepius.
Asclepius? I'm not familiar with that name. Can you tell us more about him?
Of course. Asclepius was the son of Apollo in Greek mythology. He was driven by a noble desire to save humanity. He would often venture into the wilderness to study plants and animals, seeking remedies for various diseases. It's actually quite similar to the Chinese legendary figure Shennong, who was said to have tasted hundreds of herbs to discover their medicinal properties.
That's incredible. But how did he end up with a snake on a staff as his symbol?
Well, there's a legend about that. One day, a snake coiled around Asclepius' staff. He killed the snake, but soon after, another snake appeared carrying an herb in its mouth. Surprisingly, this herb revived the dead snake. From that day forward, Asclepius carried a staff with a snake coiled around it, which became his symbol.
That's quite a story. It seems snakes have played a significant role in many cultures.
Indeed, they have. In Western culture, snakes have long been associated with mystery and spirituality, much like in the biblical story of Adam and Eve.
So Asclepius became known for his healing abilities. Did that cause any problems?
Actually, it did. According to the myth, Asclepius became so skilled at healing that he could even bring people back from the dead. This upset Hades, the god of the underworld, because fewer souls were entering his realm. Hades complained to Zeus, who, also displeased with Asclepius, struck him down with a thunderbolt.
Oh no, that seems rather unfair.
It certainly does. This unjust action angered Apollo, Asclepius' father, who sought retribution for his son's death. There was quite a conflict between the gods, which was pretty common in Greek mythology. Eventually, Zeus decided to honor Asclepius by placing his body in the sky, creating the constellation Ophiuchus, also known as the Serpent Bearer.
So, Asclepius became a constellation in the god of medicine. That's quite a journey. But how did this translate into the symbol we see today?
Well, symbolically, the snake came to represent healing, while the staff represents the human spine. The staff can also symbolize traveling, as many ancient healers journeyed to treat patients. Over time, this snake-entwined staff became synonymous with medicine.
That's fascinating. But I've also seen medical symbols with two snakes. What's the story there?
That's actually a common misconception. The double snake caduceus, often mistakenly used as a medical symbol, has a different origin. It's actually the staff of Hermes and is more closely associated with commerce and swift travel. The confusion started in 1902 when a high-ranking official insisted that the U.S. Army Medical Corps use the caduceus as their emblem.
Interesting. So we should really be seeing just one snake on medical symbols. Now, I'm curious, are there any alternative medical symbols in other cultures, like China?
Yes, there are. In China, some have suggested using traditional Chinese medical symbols instead of Western ones. For example, the phrase Xuanhu Jishi, which means mysterious gourd saves the world, has been proposed.
A gourd. That's unexpected. What's the story behind that?
It comes from an interesting legend in the Book of Later Han. The story tells of an old man selling medicine from a large gourd hanging from the eaves. At night, he would jump into the gourd to sleep, using it as a sort of magical hotel room. A man named Fei Changfang witnessed this, believed the old man to be a celestial being, and begged to become his disciple.
That's quite a tale. What happened next?
Well, the old man led Fei Changfang into the gourd, revealing a magical world inside filled with pavilions, exotic flowers, and all manner of wonders. Fei Changfang stayed to learn medicine from the old man, and when he finally emerged from the gourd, he discovered that over a decade had passed. He then became a renowned physician of the Eastern Han Dynasty.
Wow, that's like something out of a fantasy novel. Did this story have any lasting impact?
It certainly did. This legend inspired many doctors to hang gourds as signs for their practices. It also gave rise to the saying, "One doesn't know what medicine is sold in his gourd," referring to someone's unpredictable nature or hidden talents.
That's really interesting. It seems like both Western and Eastern medical traditions have deep roots in mythology. How did medicine start to separate from these mythological origins?
You're right. In ancient times, medical practices were often intertwined with mythological stories. This was an era when science and mythology were not clearly separated. It wasn't until about 1,000 years after Asclepius that the West saw the emergence of Hippocrates, the first figure to significantly separate medicine from mythology.
Hippocrates. Now that's a name I've heard before. When did he live?
Hippocrates was born around 460 BCE, more than a century after Confucius. It's worth noting that historical records from his time are surprisingly scarce and often vague. We can estimate his birth year based on a brief mention by Plato in his dialogues.
So what made Hippocrates stand out from other physicians of his time?
Well, during the time of Plato and Aristotle, there were many famous physicians, and Hippocrates was just one among them. However, as time passed, others were forgotten while Hippocrates' fame grew. He became known for his approach to medicine that focused on observable phenomena rather than supernatural causes.
That sounds like quite a shift in thinking. How did people react to this new approach?
It was indeed a significant change. Hippocrates strongly opposed the notion that illnesses were caused by offending gods or spirits. He warned people that seeking divine intervention or fortune-telling was futile in combating diseases. Instead, he urged people to seek medical treatment from physicians.
That must have been quite revolutionary for its time. Did Hippocrates develop any specific theories about how the body works?
Yes, he did. Hippocrates is most famous for proposing the doctrine of the four humors. This theory suggested that the body contained four main fluids: blood, phlegm, bile, and black bile. Health was believed to be a result of these fluids being in balance.
Four humors. That's interesting. How did they apply this theory to treating patients?
Well, if a patient had stomach pain, for example, the doctor might conclude that they had an excess of black bile. Since black bile was associated with the spleen and had cold, dry properties, the treatment would involve applying the opposite qualities, warm and moist. This is why even today we often hear the advice to drink plenty of warm water when we're feeling unwell.
That's fascinating. It's amazing how some of these ideas have persisted. Now, I've heard of something called the Hippocratic Oath. Can you tell us about that?
Certainly. The Hippocratic Oath is a set of ethical guidelines for the medical profession, supposedly established by Hippocrates himself. It outlined what doctors should and shouldn't do, creating a framework for medical ethics. While many aspects of this oath have become outdated, it laid the foundation for medical ethics that continue to influence the profession today.
What kind of things did the oath cover?
The core tenet is that a doctor's actions should never harm the patient. The original oath also forbade abortion and euthanasia, topics that remain controversial even today. Interestingly, it also covered the economics of the medical profession, emphasizing the importance of supporting one's teachers financially.
Wow, it seems like it covered a lot of ground. Is the Hippocratic Oath still used today?
While the original oath isn't used verbatim, the tradition of taking an oath has continued in the medical profession to this day. Modern versions have been adapted to reflect current medical practices and ethical standards, but they still recognize the special role and responsibilities of doctors.
That's really interesting. It's amazing how these ancient ideas and practices still influence modern medicine. Thank you so much for sharing all this fascinating information with us today.
It's been my pleasure. The history of medicine is truly a rich tapestry of human ingenuity, cultural beliefs, and ethical evolution. there's always more to explore in this fascinating field.